All right, let's dive right in to chatting about some challenges and roadblocks that you will inevitably face throughout this process and throughout this journey. So, first thing is first is creating rituals to navigate these challenges. You've probably heard me say it before, you'll probably hear me say it again. Often we feel like we get caught with these unexpected challenges, these unexpected resistances, these unexpected roadblocks, and if we sit down and we're truly honest with ourselves, a lot of these things that just sort of pop up are things that we probably could plan on happening anyway. There's all kinds of things that are coming up at work. Things that are coming up, especially if you have kids, all kinds of things coming up with school, with your spouse, unexpected, meals out, all these things that are, quote, just random are rarely actually that random. And if we become better planners, then we can often create these rituals or these plans to have better outcomes and outcomes that align more closely with the goal that we're trying to achieve. So, if you haven't already, the previous module, we did talk about eating out a lot. And I know that becomes a challenge and a roadblock for a lot of folks. And so we're not necessarily going to cover that in this module, in this training. We're going to talk about some more challenges and roadblocks that are going to come up pretty consistently. So first thing is first, start to ask better questions, right? I'm a big fan of setting time aside on a Sunday or, whenever your week starts. I definitely have folks that come through this program that, work on the weekend. So perhaps Thursday is the beginning of your week, whatever works for you, and set some time aside to plan. And so starting to ask questions like, what might challenge me today? What might challenge me this week? Or what might challenge me over the weekend? So, this is a question that I do like to ask at the beginning of the week, but I also really like to ask on a daily basis. So, waking up each morning and saying, "Hey, what might get in the way of my success today?" And this isn't doomsday planning. Brene Brown has this concept where she talks about foreboding joy. This is not, getting up and saying, well, this is going to get me today. This is being realistic with yourself so that you can set yourself up for better success. The same thing, right? When we come to a weekend, rather than just saying, well, if it's the weekend, things are going to happen, looking at realistically what is going to challenge you over the weekend and how can you better plan for more success. This is a part of being, really self-reflective. And I'm actually going to give you an exercise. I know this module is so full of exercises, but this is something that you can continue to come back to over and over and over again, so that you can continue to set yourself up for success. The second thing that you can do in this ritual is ask yourself, what small action can I do to manage the challenge? So being really honest with yourself, whether it's the beginning of the week, whether or not it's daily or before the weekend, figuring out what small action you can do to manage the challenge. An example of that, if you have a workout planned after work and you know that you have a meeting that might possibly go over, rather than your challenge being, well, I'm not going to be able to get to the gym because then I have to go home and get my workout clothes, or maybe you truly just don't have time to get to the gym. Could you do a small action in that moment to change out your workout? Maybe even if you have to, trade it for another day. Make this into a rest day, but make sure you're planning the workout for another day. Do you need to shorten your workout? Do you need to make sure that you take your equipment? Do you need to change it to a home workout? What small action can you do to manage that challenge? If you know that you're going to be in the car for a long period of time, for work, for a road trip, for a kid's sporting event, whatever have you, can you make sure that you have a pre-made snack ready to go, a protein bar, a protein shake, whatever you need to make sure that you're not getting absolutely starving, so you're not pulling over at the nearest drive-through and making choices that you wouldn't otherwise make. So I'm going to just leave you with those examples. Obviously, whatever your challenge may be, there's going to be a different example. And of course, as you go through this process week by week, there's a section in your check-in sheet to discuss challenges, and we can start to discuss what those small actions could be specific to your unique challenges should you need support and assistance there. And then always asking yourself, how can I better prepare for my success? Now, I was a Girl Scout growing up. And so, being, whether you're a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, being prepared was just something that we were taught to do. But constantly asking yourself, how can I better prepare for my success? So maybe last week you sat down through the ritual and you were looking at success strategies for that. Maybe they didn't all go as planned. And so moving forward into this week, how can we just level up a little bit at a time so that we're more successful, so that our success is guaranteed, because that's what we want. So again, I'm a big fan of Sunday rituals, or the beginning of your week, whenever that is, constantly just being able to ask yourselves these questions. How can I be more like the version of myself that I want to be this week? So, one of the biggest challenges that we face when it comes to our nutrition, when it comes to making decisions around exercise and just leveling up in general, it often comes around stress and emotional eating. So, a couple of things that we can do when it comes to stress eating and emotional eating, first of all, is to become a proactive thinker. And so there are a couple of exercises in this module where I talk about limiting beliefs, I talk about the inner critic, I talk about the what then. So I'm not going to talk about that in this training. Go back and make sure you read that and start to work on your what then. Also talks about how, it's okay to honor the fact that you feel what you feel, that you have emotion. None of this is about avoiding emotion. In fact, it's the opposite of that. And none of this is about not acknowledging that it is there. But what I often hear folks come to me and say when it comes to stress and emotional eating is I really hear people saying, how the hell did this happen? And so if you've ever had that thought process, just know that that is really, really common, but it's also coming from a reactive place. And when it comes to achieving greater success, it really pays to be more proactive. So reactive is, also a fixed mindset. So we've talked about mindset and the laws of positive change. So, and that's the second thing here. So these two will tie in together because it is imperative that you develop a growth mindset, and you can go back to listen to that as you need. But a reactive mindset or a reactive attitude is a fixed mindset. So those that are reacting don't typically take responsibility for their actions and therefore the consequences. And they often find themselves fighting fires and dealing with crises and, not really taking care of themselves. And so the reason that this is number one on my list, this sounds like really terrible, and it's not. It's really common. And so what I'm hoping to do here is give you some insight so you can start to make some shifts. Because I see this a lot with caregivers and moms, right? We're always on the reactive, like react. And what we want to shift to when it comes to our self-care, our well-being, our health, and our results is proactive. And so, again, that is embodying a growth mindset. That's taking responsibility and ownership. That's not fighting fires. This is developing a solution orientation. So again, going back to the laws of positive change, this ties right in because, when we're proactive, we're going to favor the long-term results of our actions. And that's the big thing here. And that's one of the clutch strategies that I can give you to move away from stress and emotional eating is being able to recognize what your bigger picture is and how, if we're proactive and going back to the what then strategy, that we can get closer to our goal and therefore understand the results and the consequences of our actions. And so this really comes down to self-awareness, and I've got some other strategies that we're going to move through, such as notice and name. So right below growth mindset, notice and name, all of this is tying in together, creating that self-awareness, notice and naming when you are more reactive, when you are more proactive, noticing where you are, noticing what's around you, noticing who's with you. When are you finding yourself more reactive and more proactive? And then once again, I'm going to mention again, going back to the laws of positive change, how can you start to rewrite that story? How can we start to shift from being reactive in situations around certain people? Again, I hear this a lot with children. I hear this a lot in career situations. And how can we start to become more proactive? Here are some ways that I'm going to give you to become more proactive. So first of all is to put responsibility of your actions on yourself. Even when it comes to, your results and coaching, I'm here to support you all the way. But when it comes down to it, you are 100% responsible of your actions and behaviors always. That is one of the top things that we have control over at all times. There's going to be so many circumstances that we aren't going to be able to control. And that's something that you will always be able to control. Focus on controlling and managing the things that you can control and manage. Look, I get it. Most of you are probably high achieving women and you want to excel at everything. You want to be able to manage all these things. You want to be able to control all these things. But the reality is that we can't control everything. We need to control and manage what we can. This is going to free up so much mental space. I promise you that. If you take away anything from that, it's just how much freer that you will feel. I've already mentioned this, but anticipate and plan, right? Look ahead. Very few things are truly that surprising. I'm going to say it again. Focus on your journey with the destination in mind, looking at that bigger picture. What are the things that you are doing now? How are they influencing the bigger picture? The actions that you take now have consequences. Are they a vote for your goal or a vote against your goal? And then again, I'm going to say it again, be solution oriented, not problem oriented. Focus on what you can do right now rather than how much things suck. And so when we're dealing with uncomfortable emotions, when we're dealing with stress, we often tend to focus on, wow, this sucks. This food is going to make me feel better. Go back to that what then? What else makes you feel better? And what's going to make you feel better long term? Lastly, here, call yourself out. Call yourself out. Hey, I'm feeling tired, which means I'm more likely to grab junk food. Hey, it was a super stressful day at work. I'm more likely to grab 1 to 2 glasses of wine. This is again this is throwing us into a state of mindfulness, taking us from an automated thinking into a more conscious thinking. It's a buffer. It's going to cause us to pause. It's a way to make you feel more in control, to hold yourself accountable, and just again, once you're calling yourself out, noticing and naming, saying what is actually happening versus just reactively going for the food, reactively choosing to skip the workout, reactively, just going to Netflix and veg and snack or whatever. Call yourself out. Call yourself out. Even verbally say, this is what I'm doing, and this is the outcome of what I'm actively choosing to do. It just really sits differently when we are saying what's happening. More often than not, when we make food choices that we're not super proud of or movement choices that we're not super proud of, we want to kind of just look the other way. I'll often, check in with women and they'll say, well, I did this and I didn't even track it because it was so bad. So calling yourself out is really saying, this is what's happening, and it'll give you the opportunity to second guess your decision. So let's move on to what to focus on. So what we can focus on when we are in seasons of challenge, when we are in seasons of resistance or roadblock, we can focus on how we are actually progressing. So, this goes back to having realistic expectations as well. Be realistic with what you can do in the moment. Underestimate your capacity and go small. This is why I'm such a fan of these micro goals that facilitate the macro goal. When we have these small goals, we can focus on how we're progressing. We can get wins, we can get results, and we can continue to feel that motivation. So if you recognize the holidays are a huge time for this, or vacation periods, or back to school time, all of these times are really big times to focus on smaller micro goals. And then we can continue to level up and work up. So this is where we can focus on 1%. Guys, if you increase your skill level 1% every single day over a month, that's 30%, which is much better than saying I'm going to level up 10% this week and then ultimately getting frustrated and finding yourself spiraling in the opposite direction. So figure out what 0% is for you and then add from there. Constantly looking at your progress as, how am I better than yesterday? How am I better than last week? How am I better than last month? How am I better than last year? Unless you are just standing still or constantly moving backwards, which I know if you're in this program, you're not. You are consistently leveling up. We're always looking for progress, never, ever, ever perfection. And when we can look at just 1% at a time, 1% at this meal, 1% in this workout, 1% with these steps, then we can show up more easily and continue to take action. So what's your 0%? And guys, really for most of you, it's like, I just didn't even get up today. What is your 1% ability to level up? I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with SpongeBob SquarePants, but it's something that my younger brother watched when he was little, and I'm a lot older than him, so I heard SpongeBob a lot. But there's an episode about opposite day, and so opposite day is something. This is outcome based decision making. So looking at our challenges and our roadblocks from an opposite day perspective, we can ask questions like, how's that working? So when we're, again, going back to the reactive and proactive, when we are deciding what to do based on the results that we get, we can also often look at it like, okay, I'm going to do the opposite of what I'm going to do in a reactive mentality. This is what I feel like I should just subconsciously do, or automated do. How's that going to work for you? We're probably going to want to do the opposite. And one exercise that I really like to do is kind of look at what your defaults are, right? We all have them. Make a list and then ask yourself, how did that work for you? Be honest. Try doing the opposite of what you would have previously done. And, some of you guys are, probably going, whoo, that's a little much right now. But if you really look at it in previous situations, when you've been stressed, when you've been emotional, when you've gone on vacation, when you've eaten out, or done all these things that haven't yielded the outcome that you wanted, how did that work for you? And what can you do that's different from that for a better outcome? Next, we look at trade offs. So, life and improving your health and fitness is about trade offs, right? In order to say yes to one thing, our goal, sometimes we have to say no to another. Sometimes, in order to get to our goal, we have to say yes to something that's a little bit more challenging and less attractive than what we are having to say no to. So, an extra 30 minutes of sleep may mean saying no to a Netflix series, etc. Being able to hit your macros may mean saying no to dessert at this one particular restaurant. That doesn't mean that we never have dessert, but we're trading off. Looking at what our goal is and how we're actually going to get there. Looking at what you are willing to trade and what are you not willing to trade, right? That's another huge thing. There are certain foods, which I think is an important part of anyone's process, that should just be, I'm not willing to give that up. And so we look at how can we make this fit so that we can truly enjoy food and truly enjoy our lives and be able to get results at the same time. What do you want to do first? So, looking at what you have going on throughout your week, what are you going to prioritize first? If you can only do so many things that you feel like you need to do for your goal, feel like you want to do for yourself, what's a priority? And so for me, most of the time, movement is a priority. And so this looks like all kinds of different things. And sometimes sleep needs to be more of a priority than movement. So if we're looking at getting up super early, all of these things are considerations looking at your overall goal. Sometimes weightlifting will take place over a walk. So looking at all these different things, going out with friends, going out with a spouse, doing this with the kids, cleaning the house. I'll be the first to admit that my walks and my fitness probably take, priority over that. The same with meal prep, just kind of listing all the things that you need to do. What is your priority? What are you going to do first? What is the most important? And, keep it real. What are you not prepared to give up? So, when it comes to fitness and health, there are certain activities and certain things where I say, no, I can't do that because that's not going to align with how I want to feel, who I want to be, what I want to do. And this could look like social situations. This could look like parties. This could look like certain meals, certain foods, certain things that are going to keep us from working out, all these different things. What are you not prepared to give up, and how can you navigate around that for a better outcome? And that takes us into delaying gratification, right? So I like to think of this as surfing the disappointment. It's easier to delay gratification when you're supported, which you have that through this program. When you have practiced skills of calming down and focusing on your long-term goal. So again, looking at the bigger picture, looking at progress, and looking at your 1%. And this is really, really important here, guys, when you believe in the goal. So I know this gets to be a little bit woo-woo for some, but you truly have to believe deep down in your heart of hearts that you are capable, that you are worthy, that you are good enough to accomplish your goal. It is much, much, much easier for you to be able to delay something that seems so shiny and pretty when you believe that you're going to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And this is true for so many other things, right? If you don't truly believe that you're going to get to your end result, this is when that inner critic or some of your limiting beliefs pop in and somebody will say, hey, let's go out for a funnel cake party or whatever. And you'll say, sure, because I don't really truly believe that I can lose the 20 pounds or whatever. It is harder to delay gratification when we're stressed, when we're new to the practice of slowing down. And so we constantly want to be working on mindfulness and awareness. And we're going to talk about that more in our next module. And when you feel isolated or disconnected. And so a lot of these come along with, emotional and stress eating. And so that's why I want to bring that in here. And so we can change the conditions that shape our choices. We can notice when it's easier to make wise choices. We can slow down. Again, calling yourself out is just an act of slowing down. Remind yourself of what you're trying to accomplish here. And then again, plan ahead. Plan ahead. You can also review your usual, again, this goes to like opposite day, review your usual impulse eating situations and start to anticipate them a little bit better. So going back to the what then, this is a really good distraction as you start to use that practice, use the opposite day practice. They all kind of work together just so that you're more conscientious and more aware of your default patterns, which is so important in getting to know yourself better so that you can, really accomplish more as well. And so when it comes to these roadblocks and challenges, the last thing that I want to remind you of is that resistance is natural. This is a survival mechanism. You are changing patterns, you are changing habits, you are changing behaviors, you are changing your life. And, I like to remind people that when you look in your mirror, your body doesn't really recognize anything. It sees anything that we are doing as stressful. And so although balancing your hormones, maybe losing the weight, building some muscle, having more energy is going to be so transformative for your overall health and well-being. What your body perceives change as right now is stressful, as something that's scary, almost like it's an attack. Your metabolism is so incredibly smart. It is constantly adapting to its situation. So you have adapted to the current state that you're in. So change can be a scary thing for your body. And so resistance is a very natural thing. And what we're constantly doing as we take action is we are either building or breaking trust with not only ourselves, but our body as well. So we want to really keep that in mind as we move forward. And so that we don't wind up in the yo-yo trap, right? A lot of folks will get frustrated when they don't get results. And I want to remind you consistency before complaints. So if we're not consistent with our eating behaviors, we're not consistent with our movement practices, we're not consistent with our sleep, we're not managing our stress well, we're not building that consistency piece, and that can be hard on your body. So the more we can get to know ourselves, the more we can navigate these challenges and our roadblocks so we can build that consistency, the better your results are going to be. So it's helpful to remember what's really important. So what do you want right now? And what do you ultimately want, right? So going back to delaying gratification, that often becomes the case. What do you want right now? And is it helpful for what do you ultimately want? And also, are you willing to sacrifice your values and your goals for what you want in the moment? And when it comes back to surfing the disappointment, when it comes to delaying gratification, it's important to look at can I surf the disappointment of not doing this thing? If you really want to eat an entire sleeve of Oreos, can you surf it for 15 minutes and really check in with yourself and ask yourself, is this something that I ultimately want? And the last thing, I'm going to go back to the previous slide. I wanted to go through this first before we go into the hard thing, is overcoming fear. And so again, resistance is natural, and a lot of this can be fearful, not only for your body, but for you as well mentally. And this is why discovering your limiting beliefs, discovering what that inner critic is saying is so important. So when looking at fear, ask yourself why you're uncomfortable and what you're afraid of. Name it. Again, going back to calling yourself out, call out the fear. And, again, as we go through it, as we do the damn thing anyway, we're going to continue to progress. Fear protects us, but it doesn't have to control us. Notice, name, do. Focus on being present in the moment. Focus on the now. If you're afraid of being hungry, get hungry and find out what happens. If you're afraid to, be stressed and not stress eat, try it. Surf the disappointment. See what happens. And if you surf through the disappointment and you still want the food, you still want to do the thing, you still want to bail on the workout, that's always still there. But I want to challenge you to be a little bit uncomfortable, to be a little bit more uncomfortable in the name of your goal. Are you willing to sit with some temporary discomfort in the name of greater comfort, happiness, freedom, all the things that you are going to feel, all the things that you're going to experience when you get the results, when you get to the goal that you're seeking? And again, constantly remembering why you started, constantly reminding yourself of your why is going to help you navigate the tricky things, the rocks and all the resistances along the way. So I would love to see some responses from some of the questions and the exercises in this module and your check-ins, and I will talk to you guys again soon.